The GameCube era is easily one of the most nostalgic eras for me. So many of the games released during this time frame have been ones that I still consider to be some of the best of their respective franchises. And out of all of these, one game stands above all the rest. A game that to this day is my favorite game of all time. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is heralded by many as a masterpiece of a game. This game decided to take everything its predecessor did and improve upon it in every conceivable way. Today, we're going to take a look at exactly what makes this game so special. And also, if you're one of those many people who are not subscribed to this channel, you should take this time to click on that subscribe button and ring the bell. When you think of Paper Mario, what thought comes to mind? What makes this sub-series distinct from every other Mario game? If you guessed the world, then you'd be correct. It would probably be more accurate to ascribe this to all Mario RPGs, not just Paper Mario, but the underlying point still stands. Both the first Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG before it took the Mushroom Kingdom and made it feel lived in. We no longer just have a series of courses, but a set of real places with towns and roads connecting them. They became real locations as opposed to just set pieces. And so once Paper Mario built up what the Mushroom Kingdom is actually like, how exactly is the sequel going to follow that up? Well, the game decided to take a cue from two other Mario games released around the same time, Super Mario Sunshine and Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. What this era was defined by for Mario was the exploration of locations outside of the Mushroom Kingdom. Sunshine took us to the tropical Isle Delfino, while Superstar Saga took us to the nearby Bean Bean Kingdom. The Thousand Year Door decided to follow this up by taking us to the town of Rogueport, which when compared to the previous two examples, was very different from what came before it. Rogueport isn't some bright, colorful town with cheery and welcoming town folks. No. It is a dark and seedy place, and it establishes very early on that it is not a safe place to walk around in. Almost immediately upon making port, Mario ends up having to help a girl out who's being chased by this group of oddly dressed goons, only to almost get pummeled by them. The tone is set even further as Mario is taken into the town square where we see... Wait, is that a noose? Yeah, that's a noose. And it's background elements like this that do a lot to set the tone. You've probably heard the phrase, show don't tell before. And that's exactly what this opening does. Not only do we see this noose right smack dab in the middle of town, but we also witness members of what is basically the Mafia beat up a guy in broad daylight, while no one does anything to help him. As we continue through the town, we watch ourselves get pickpocketed, and in the Japanese version, the house where you go to get your money back has the outline of a toad on the floor, as in the same kind of outlines that police draw when someone is murdered. All of this works to establish a distinct tone for Rogueport, which is different from that of any other Mario location introduced up until this point. We then see each of the various chapters develop each of their locations into something distinct to make them more interesting. Glitzville is a flying city that is a hub for basically this world's equivalent of the WWE, and thus it has a bright, touristy look to it. Poshley Heights is home to some of the richest people in this game, and it's indicated by the fact that you have to take an expensive luxury train to get there, and the inn in this town is the most expensive one in the game, and provides you with a luxury omelet upon waking up. Twilight Town is a location where it's always night, and is right down the road from a haunted old church. And the list goes on like this. Hell, you go to the moon after being shot out of a cannon. A whole 3 years before Mario took flight again in Super Mario Galaxy. There's also a lot of details that help flesh out the lore of the world hidden around for those who look for it. On the rooftops of Rogueport, there is an NPC who tells Mario various pieces of the game's lore and explains the history of the town and the treasure behind the Thousand Year Door. You can learn that the chests that curse you throughout the game are actually the spirits of the heroes that sealed the Shadow Queen 1,000 years ago, or that the 3 dragon bosses you fight were actually the Shadow Queen's pets. The game also does a few things to tie into the world of other Mario games. Several of the NPCs in this game are of the Beanish race from Superstar Saga, and both Piantas and Shine Sprites from Sunshine make an appearance here. And that does nothing to make mention of Luigi's tale of his exploits in the Waffle Kingdom, which we can only learn about by talking to him or buying his books in Rogueport. I mean, seriously, this would make for a great game or even a bonus scenario on Thousand Year Door Remastered. Can you imagine? Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door plus Luigi's Adventure. Coming to a store near you? Probably never given the current state of Nintendo. Of course, we can't really discuss these worlds without also talking about how each area factors into the overall story. A lot of video games, especially RPGs, have a problem with a certain narrative device that they like to employ somewhat liberally in their stories: MacGuffins.
A MacGuffin you see in most films about spies. It is the thing that the spies are after. In the days of Rudyard Kipling, it would be the plans of the fort on the Khyber Pass. It would be the plans of an airplane engine and the plans of an atom bomb, anything you like. It's always called the thing that the characters on the screen worry about, but the audience don't care.
The main problem with MacGuffins is just as Hitchcock explains: the audience doesn't care about it. So if we have no reason to care about an item, what exactly is the emotional weight of the story? At that point, you're just visiting locations with no regards as to why you're going there beyond the fact that the game told you to do so. And these things are all over our favorite franchises. The 8 gym badges in Pokemon, the 4 crystals in Final Fantasy, the Power Stars in Super Mario 64, insert name of important Zelda item here. I think you get the point. The Thousand Year Door, like all of the examples above, has its own set of MacGuffins with the crystal stars, but the game decides not to focus directly on them. Yes, they serve as the main motivation and source of conflict for the main plot, and act as a vehicle to get Mario to each location, but once you get there, the game kind of pushes them to the side to make way for whatever the chapter in question is about. In Chapter 1, you end up slaying a dragon that terrorizes a village. Chapter 2 sees you help a tiny race of people called Punies liberate their homeland from oppressors. Chapter 3 starts fairly normal, but starts to morph into a mystery as more and more things about the league you're in start to seem off. Chapter 4 is a real doozy, as you first have to save a town from a curse that turns people into pigs, only to have your identity stolen and have to get it back with the help of one of the game's villains. Chapter 5, while starting out as a fairly normal treasure hunt, quickly goes awry as you get stranded on a deserted island with no way of getting back. Chapter 6 is another mystery, but this time you end up doing some actual detective work. And Chapter 7 exists, and we don't talk about it. The first half, at least. The second half is pretty cool, when we get to storm the enemy base and all, but the wild goose chase that preceded it, yeah, that doesn't work for me. So as you can tell, each section has something else going on that brings the focus not on the crystal stars themselves, but on the locations where they're housed, and the characters involved in said locations. Which then naturally brings us into the next topic of discussion, the characters. Each of the characters in this story is unique not only in design, but also in personality. And while not all are consistently good, it helps to make the world feel more alive. Koops isn't just a generic Koopa like Cooper, he's a scaredy cat who's trying to become brave and avenge his father, who we later find out is alive, but that's not the point here. What is the fact that Koops has an arc. He has growth. He comes to find something that he lacked throughout the chapter. We see similar things with Vivian, who is introduced to us in Chapter 2 and then joins us later in Chapter 4. When we first meet her, it's as a villain, one of the 3 Shadow Sirens. But very quickly we see that Vivian is a bit of an outcast from the group, as her eldest sister Beldam literally gaslights her. When we encounter her in Chapter 4, it's after Mario has his identity stolen. So she doesn't actually know who you are, but she ends up joining because of the kindness you show towards her, which was enough to when she actually learns that she's helping her enemy, she winds up staying anyways because Mario was the only person to have shown her kindness. It's probably also worth mentioning that in the Japanese version, Vivian was written as being transgender, and makes that the implied reason for Beldam's treatment towards her, which allows the game to explore a more complex idea than if Beldam was just mean to her for no reason. This also makes it a rare example of positive representation of a trans character in a mainstream video game, especially given the time frame of its release. And no, this doesn't count. I'll get to you eventually. And while it was ultimately censored from the English release, the fact that it was there at all was quite an accomplishment. And then there's the case of Admiral Bobbery, an old sea captain who blames himself for his wife's death and refuses to set sail because of it. It's only after you deliver a letter to him from his deceased wife, where she explains that she doesn't want him to blame himself for her death, that he actually decides to join you on your expedition. It's these stories, this development that makes this adventure so memorable, as there's not much you can do with Mario, the static protagonist that he is. Of course, the partners are somewhat limited in their development after the chapters they're introduced in, as they wind up just becoming abilities and flavor text, which makes their overall impact on the narrative somewhat diminished. This is a fairly minor complaint in the grand scheme of things, but it's a flaw that's worth acknowledging. But I've gushed about the story and world enough for now, so let's talk about the actual gameplay. You know, arguably the make or break part of a lot of video games. And what we see is a system that is pretty masterful in its execution. The beauty of this game is how its simplicity works in its favor. The game utilizes a very simple turn order structure and fairly low damage numbers. It makes every point of HP and damage count, as opposed to games like Final Fantasy where damage can easily go into the thousands, making the meaning of how much damage you're doing a bit harder to really realize. However, what truly makes this combat interesting is something that all Mario RPGs are honestly known for, which is the utilization of action commands, which requires button presses for attacks to be at their maximum strength, increasing player interaction, as opposed to just inputting commands and watching everything play out. And while the Mario and Luigi series definitely has the better execution of the action command system, it's still pretty well executed here in Paper Mario as well. It's a combat system that's very easy to comprehend and very fun to play through, which makes it an ideal intro to JRPGs. And if you need proof of that, this game was my first JRPG, followed by Pokemon Crystal. This simplicity is made even more approachable by the complete lack of a need to grind. So long as you fight most of your battles, the game will never be too much of a challenge, as the designers have carefully placed enough enemies to where if you play well, you should be sufficiently leveled right before a boss and run out of resources right before you either level up or find a heart block. The only real spike in difficulty, so to speak, is the final boss, which is a bit of a challenge. As someone who's played through this game many times, even I struggled to beat the final boss on my current playthrough. The game also offers a fair number of customization features. When the player levels up, they're given a fair degree of control of how they develop Mario, as they are able to choose which stats to increase. The game also offers a large array of badges to equip that provide even more customizability. There are so many options to play with in terms of stat allocations and badge setups that make the game very replayable, as there's always a new development path to try. The only flaw you can find with the gameplay has to do with the level design. You'll notice that a lot of areas in this game are kinda linear. You end up following what is basically a single path to the goal in a lot of cases, and in some chapters, namely chapters 4, 5, and 7, you wind up going back and forth on the same path multiple times. This is actually something that I will say the Origami King does have on this game. The level design and exploration are so much more solid there, although being on the Switch and having the ability to load larger areas at once definitely does help a lot in that department. That being said, the lackluster level design at points doesn't really matter, as this game doesn't make itself to be about exploration. It's driven forward by its story, not having 1,000 little things to collect in each area. And replaying the game recently made me realize how even the more tedious sections of the game are kinda just over before you know it. They're not even that bad. Ultimately, what makes this game so special is not only was it mechanically kind of brilliant, but also added so much life and character to the Mario world that the main series simply doesn't provide. Any flaws I find with this game are overshadowed by an abundance of good things. Those few areas or sections that are less good do very little to drag down the overall experience. There is good reason this game is as popular as it is, and those aspects will ensure this game's place in history as a highly influential entry in the Mario franchise that Nintendo is constantly trying to make us forget about somehow. Guys, it's not gonna happen. We love this game. It's not gonna happen. Just give it up. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, guys, peace.